it is an exciting time in life for a lot of people. If they want it, they wrap up that primary career, but they think, work is not a four-letter word, right? Work should be something we embrace, that we love. And if it can add, even as a safety net, to continue to bring in some income in retirement, is a really great strategy.
Are you freaking out about retirement? Well, many Gen Xers are feeling that way, and with good reason. The oldest of them are about to turn 60, and the youngest of them are, a couple years away from becoming eligible for Medicare. But nonetheless, time is short. And here to talk with me about all that and how Gen Xers can plan for retirement is Kerry Hannon, a Yahoo Finance columnist and author of a newly published book called Retirement Bites. Kerry, welcome.
Thanks, Bob. Great to be here.
It's a pleasure. There's a lot we could talk about in your book, but one of the things that sort of caught my attention is this notion of how Gen Xers can increase their cash flow as they plan for retirement. And in your book, you talk about them maybe extending their careers when they retire from their primary career, maybe continuing to work in retirement. What do they need to know about that?
Yeah, Bob, I tell you, this is one of my favorite topics is working longer, encore careers, what's next. I mean, it is an exciting time in life for a lot of people. If they want it, they wrap up that primary career, but they think, work is not a four-letter word, right? Work should be something we embrace, that we love. And if it can add, even as a safety net, to continue to bring in some income in retirement, is a really great strategy. And the sweetest part is if you can do work that you really maybe had always wanted to do or had set aside in order to really make the big bucks along the way, or whatever it may be. But you return to your roots of something that always sort of you were curious about or you wish you could have tried. So I spend some time in the book writing about, okay, so let's plan for a slightly longer working life. I'm not saying pedal to the metal. It doesn't have to be. If you want to have a completely shift and do a second career, well, of course you could. People who retire at 65, my goodness, you could have 2+ or 3 decades in retirement. So you a lot of time, especially, we'll say even at 50, you could get started on a whole second career without blinking. But what the point is that you mentioned is this is something to consider as an ongoing way to bring in some income as you approach, kind of tip your toes into retirement full time, right? So a lot of people may inch into this. They may work part-time, consulting. There are lots of ways to slice and dice it. But the point is, start thinking 5 years in advance about what that might be.
Yeah, and then if you need some help, a retirement coach might help you along the way to sort of figure out what it is that you've always wanted to do but never did.
I think retirement coaches are super, and it's sort of a segment of the coaching business that has really taken off lately, particularly as the boomers moved into retirement. And so I think a retirement coach can be an objective person who can kind of look at everything overall, like what are your interests? What are you best at? What is, often we don't even know what we're really good at because we take it for granted. So a coach can help you look at that, and a really good coach will also talk to you about what do you need in terms of financial remuneration? How big a role should finances, how much you make, play a part in what you're going to do next. Yeah. So this is, that soul searching and also the financial blueprint and MRI.
Yeah. So a lot of times people who extend their careers maybe default to what they know, the skills they have, the abilities they have. But in some cases, they may have to go back to school and acquire some new knowledge to do the thing that they always wanted to do, like photography or whatever it might be.
Yeah, you're right, Bob. And I think going back to school is easier than ever because you can take courses online. You don't have to have a full-blown master's program. There's all kinds of certification courses. You can cherry pick. I want to study this. I want to study that. That's a super way to sort of make that shift going back to school. I also highly recommend people do the job first and try to volunteer, moonlight, whatever it might be, volunteer. Is there a way to find out if it's as dreamy as you thought it was going to be? Yeah. And that's a good way to get started. In addition, though, it's not just if you want to do something different. In today's world, everything is moving so quickly that you have to keep your skills up to date no matter what. Whether you want to stay right where you are in your current job, and as you approach retirement for Gen Xers, you start phasing into retirement with your current employer. That's fantastic. but you're not going to stay in that job if you don't have your skills up to date. So everybody has got to constantly be honing their skills, whether they're shifting careers, starting something new as a retirement job, or phasing into retirement where they are right now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go straight to AI after we get done talking today and ask what skills I need to stay employed as I age. The thing I like about extending your career, though, is I think there was some research done by John Chauvin and others where they talked about the best way to improve your retirement security is to work 2 years longer than anticipated. And that helped a lot more than even saving more, investing more aggressively, or whatever the case may be. And it did a couple things. One, it allowed you to save more for retirement and also reduce the burden that you placed on your retirement account. So just working longer can just be a great way to improve your retirement security.
Well, there's so many great things about working longer. Just as you said, that's a big thing. You don't have to dip into your retirement accounts so soon. You can push back doing that. You can maybe continue to save for retirement, which is really what you hopefully are able to do. So you're building more equity there, more things in your retirement accounts. If you're not 65 yet, you have health insurance, hopefully. This might be a way to push back on that so you have that until you reach Medicare age. The other piece that I love about working longer is it's just good for you psychologically. It's good for you mentally. Study after study shows it keeps you mentally sharp. You feel relevant. A lot of people go into a depression when they retire. This is a way to really feel like you're part of the world still. And so that sort of you can't put a money value on it, but work is super important that way.
Yeah, the people I talk to often say when they retire, the thing that they miss is like the camaraderie that they had at work, and then they miss that, right?
It's the community.
Yeah. So other ways to sort of increase your cash flow in retirement for Gen Xers would be to delay Social Security, which is often the common advice that we give people is to wait until age 70. And obviously, there are a lot of benefits to waiting to age 70.
Yeah, Social Security is such a hot button issue these days, and it's very emotional. And a lot of Gen Xers who work with financial planners, particularly, they run the numbers without even thinking about having it in their plan because there's this fear that it's going to go away. I personally don't think it will. But, I think things will change, but I don't think it's going away. I think it will be part of people's retirement plan. But if you can possibly push back, as you said, till 70, you get that extra, 8% a year between full retirement age and so forth. Then you get the biggest bang for your buck, the biggest check for the rest of your life. And if you come from a fairly healthy family and longevity is part of the equation, it might be a good bet to do that. Other people, if it's such a personal decision about Social Security. So the fact is, if you're not in particularly good health or you really need the money, there are certainly good reasons to tap it early. But I say, if you can wait, you say if you can wait, and go to the My Social Security page. If you're having My Social Security account, you go there. Oh my goodness, they have a nice chart there that shows you in beautiful array what your check is going to be at 62. What it's going to be at full retirement age and what it would be at 70. And it's pretty astounding.
Yeah, it is astounding. And I also like to tell people that it's not an individual decision, right? If you're in a situation, it's a household decision.
Very good.
And I always think that the higher earner, we know, usually predeceases the man, usually predeceases the wife, who might be 5 years younger. And so if you want them to have the highest possible survivor's benefit, waiting to 70 helps you do that.
It makes a big thing. And this is when working with a financial advisor can help you really look at the full picture of your family and the needs.
Yeah. So when you think about also creating cash flow in retirement, a lot of, in addition to your working, earned income, in addition to Social Security, you have your retirement accounts, which can help increase your cash flow. There's got to be some ways to do that.
Yeah, well, I think your retirement accounts, again, as long as you can continue, if you're working somewhere and adding to these retirement, it's super important. If you've been able to have a Roth IRA, this is wonderful, or a Roth 401k. This is sort of a newer thing for a lot of Gen Xers. Bob, the big thing with Gen X is that when they started saving for retirement, it's a doom and gloom kind of generation. I mean, these are the slackers. They've got this bad reputation, but they grew up, riding bikes without helmets and eating Pop-Tarts and, scrappy people. But when Gen X started their careers, and we can talk a little more about this, the retirement landscape was changing.
Yeah.
So their retirement accounts might not be as robust as they wish they would be, but there are still ways to really buckle down and do so. And one is just simply doing your budget, because as you get older, you have lifestyle creep. you don't even realize you're spending on things that, when you were younger, you wouldn't have. So just take time and sit back. Where can you get lean and mean, and how can you start sock more away in those retirement accounts?
Yeah. I think people are sort of unaware of lifestyle creep, right? It could be, I don't know, you have a Netflix, Hulu, Disney subscription.
I do.
All of a sudden.
I got to take control of it.
But it's one place to start. But on the other hand, it is a discretionary expense that brings you joy and whatnot, I suppose. So there's a balance that has to be struck between.
Some people may have a second house at this point, or it's a certain, there are little things that you start taking for granted that maybe, do you still really need that?
Yeah. So when you think about, we've had Gene Chatsky on, and we talked about how do you determine how much money you need in order to fund your lifestyle. If you're Gen X and you're just about to turn 60, time is short in terms of making up the difference between what you have and what you might need to fund a desired lifestyle. What do they do?
That's correct. I think I'm going back to that budgeting thing. It's just important to really think about, take a hard look at what your costs might be in retirement. And these are things that people often don't want to sit down and pull apart. But what is your lifestyle? What do you expect it might be? Do you potentially want to move to a different part of the country where the cost of living is less, and a variety of other things that make it attractive to make a move? These kinds of decisions you need to start. If you're turning 60 this year, you need to have been thinking about, will I want to relocate? Will my cost of living drop in any way? What are my medical costs likely to be in retirement? Am I a healthy person? Not. Definitely get physically fit, because being healthy is probably the best way to have enough money when you retire. So there's lots of different things you can do. It's not the end of the road, but you really need to look carefully, consolidate accounts, and so forth.
It may not be the end of the road, but when I look at the title of your book, I think it might be the end of the road.
See, it refers to the movie Reality Bites. And so in that movie, Reality Bites was all about Gen X, the angst about growing up. Well, this is for Gen X, the angst about, oh my gosh, retirement's around the corner. How did this happen? How did this happen?
Well, it does happen fast, and I think, the more prepared you are, whether it's on getting a handle on your expenses or getting a handle on your sources of income, are really important. And one of the things that I do want to talk about, we're going to take a short break, Kerry, and then when we come back, I want to talk about Gen Xers who are business owners and who are pouring all their energy into their business, which then in turn becomes their retirement account. So
great.
Don't leave us.
I won't.
Welcome back to Decoding Retirement. I'm speaking with Kerry Hannon. She's the author of a newly published book called Retirement Bites. Not a title that suggests that what's in store for people is not going to be pleasant. A different play on words. I promised that we were going to talk about Gen Xers who are business owners, but before we do, Kerry, you wanted to make an important point about Gen Xers and their 401k plans. And
Bob, here's the thing. This is the generation that was the test generation for the 401k. 401ks were just coming on the scene as Gen Xers were entering the workplace. And pensions were sliding out. These were coming in, do-it-yourself retirement planning. Nobody told us what to do. There was very little financial education around these. There weren't many investments in the plans, only a couple of choices. And truthfully, you couldn't put very much in these plans for quite a long time. So it was like flying in the dark for most of this generation who had access to an employer plan, which was fantastic. But, they didn't have the tools and the education to really run it. So I think it really is something that needs to be taken into account when people say, oh, Gen Xers, they're woefully behind in retirement. Well, this is one reason why they started into the workplace at a time when credit cards were just happening. Everyone was sending you, but get this, open this credit card, open that one. There was little regard to whether you had any assets in order to do this. It was the heyday of plastic. Gen X has more credit card debt than any generation right now.
Yeah.
And they have higher student loan debt. So these are things that are stumbling blocks, and we need to take that into account as sort of part of what was going on in the economy at the time that they entered the workplace.
Yeah. I often say that with Gen Xers, we gave them the keys to the car without any driver's ed. And so
excellent.
Good luck to you.
I
Here's
love that.
401k.
I love that. That's the way to say it.
And then the other thing is when I think about all the credit boom that occurred back then it was like the credit versus the savers, and the credit card companies won. It was more,
yes, indeed.
Right? It was easier to spend than to save, and that was the behavior that was sort of encouraged.
Yeah.
So,
frankly, I write about personal finance, but when I was in my 20s, I used one credit card to pay another credit card at one point in my life. And I mean, I'm not happy to share that with everyone, but it happens to be true.
Yeah. Well, the good news now is I'm looking at like my son, who now knows what his credit score is while he's in his late 20s, and he knows how to
Fantastic.
improve his credit score in ways that I didn't even know that such a
Nope.
thing existed when I was in my 20s. So
Without
I
question.
think we're raising a different, financially more literate populace now, thankfully, maybe because of YouTube, not because of me.
I beg to differ.
All right, so let's talk about business owners who are Gen Xers. Many of them want to plow their earnings from their company back into the business, maybe to the detriment of their own retirement or not.
Without question. Here's the thing. Gen X is, like we talked about, they're scrappy, independent folks, and many Gen Xers actually are small business owners, right? They took their own path, right? And entrepreneurship was where it was at. When you're in that situation, having your own business is all encompassing.
Yeah.
And your business is your retirement plan. Your business, anything you make, you turn it back in. You want it to succeed so badly, or you want to support your employees in order for them to succeed. Your retirement, you always figure, I'm going to sell the business or whatever it might be. That's going to be my retirement plan. This can trip a lot of people up as they approach, 60s, a time that people start thinking about retirement. Doesn't mean there's any need they have to. It's not like, they could work as long as they want, but that they have so much of their life and their assets are tied up in their business.
Yeah, and to me, I think that may not be a bad thing, right? You want your business to grow. You want it to create an exit strategy where you get the most value for the liquidity event that you hope will occur. So to the degree that you don't invest in your business and invest in your own retirement account, you're putting at risk your business.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to get people to say, they're just, and especially if the business is everything and they care so much about it. So it's something that it's important a couple of years out to start having those conversations with someone you trust, a financial advisor, whatever it may be, or these people or individuals who specialize in small businesses in trying to figure out, one, what's it worth? Very few people actually do that valuation. They're like, okay, so if my business is my retirement plan, well, what's it worth? Like, what does that really mean? Yeah. Or will you just keep working until the last day of your life and paying yourself or getting, like, what is it? It's like.
So, I mean, obviously, people who do have an exit strategy should determine what it's worth to see then if that amount would then fund their desired lifestyle.
Number one is get the valuation and compare it to similar businesses in your region, whatever. There are plenty of folks out there who can help you do that. Number two is, okay, so what do you see happening? Do you see passing it on to a family member? And if so, do they know that? Have you had that discussion? Are they really qualified to run this business? A lot of family members, they don't really want to do this. They don't. So you need to have that discussion. You need to talk about, okay, maybe I want to retire, hire a professional, another CEO to come in and run my company, and I'll keep an ownership piece of it, but, start sharing the wealth a bit. So there are little stages, or you can do, the full-blown, do an employee stock ownership plan where you have an ESOP, which is another way to transfer the assets of the company, or simply a flat-out, as you said, liquidation, a sale of the assets of it, which is possible.
Yeah. So when you think about them planning this exit strategy, I think in the book you talk about not waiting too long to do this.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You need to give yourself 5 years. 2 years is possible. But really, if you can get to it 5 years ahead of time, it's a strategic thing, and you should be having those discussions with yourself about, can I possibly set a little aside in a retirement account for myself? And in fact, it's easier these days to have, lots of states are doing these for retirement plans for small businesses. They're helping them set them up, state and initiatives rolling out. This might be a way to just open it up for your employees and for yourself to start putting a little aside without it costing a lot.
Yeah. When you think about people going to get their valuations too, I have a lot of friends who own businesses, and it's an emotional experience because they think their business is worth so much more than what the valuator says.
No, it just can be heartbreaking. So it's like, you got to come to some hard facts here. and look at it, and then look at what some of your other assets you might have. But your business is really, I think people cling on to them maybe too long sometimes. The technology passes them by and they're still keeping in their lane, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I'm watching a lot of my friends who are business owners get bought out by private equity firms.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, it's a nice payday. On the other, they've been asked to stay on, but it's not very pleasant to work for a private equity firm.
Right. And when it's not your own, it's something there's a certain kind of person that's an entrepreneur and runs their own business. My dad was one. And I just know that he would not have been happy working for somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's what happened with one of my friends. They seem to say, like, I was used to running my business and now they run the business and I'm being told what to do, even though I know better. So when you think about like passing businesses on to children, there's that too. You mentioned maybe they're not qualified, but a lot of times business owners feel like, oh, I've built this for them. Right.
Well, of course. I mean, that's sort of the legacy, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I'm doing that. And a lot of them don't want that gift. They may not even be interested in the business. They may have worked in the business as they were growing up and they really have had enough of it. But they don't want to tell mom or dad that. It's like, ugh. So it's having those. There are consultants that really specialize in succession for small businesses. And, I think that's something you need to explore. They're almost like workshops that potential children or second generation, third generation can go to sort of work through some of these issues of is this something they want to step up into?
Yeah. So when you think about all that we've talked about with Gen X business owners, is there a to-do list, a checklist that we can leave people with?
Well, I guess the first thing is really get that valuation. Like what is your business worth? The second thing would be what's your time frame? What's the scenario for this? And really do that heart-to-heart and inner MRI of how emotional is this for you? Is this something that you can give up? Do you want to, how do you want to stay involved in it? Or is it going to be something you just need to walk away from? And then finally, what are your what else do you have? How are you going to support yourself in retirement? If you haven't built up your retirement plan, you're hoping for the sale, but do you have any other assets there?
Yeah. There's a lot that we didn't get to in the book. Next time when you come back on, what should we talk about?
Yeah, well, I'll pull out my checklist. No, no, I think there's some really great stuff. And one of my issues I love a lot, and I think you do too, Bob, is the whole thing about your mindset and how you think about money and how you approach retirement as an opportunity, not a negative. And I think there are many ways to shift our perspective on retirement so that working longer isn't a bad thing, or you're not afraid. Like, fear is a horrible thing when it comes to setting yourself up for retirement. I think work should be a piece of it. Even paid or unpaid, it should still be a piece of it.
All right, Kerry, I think that wraps up this episode of Decoding Retirement.
Thank you
so greatly appreciate you coming on. We hope we provided you with some actionable advice to help you plan for or live better in retirement. And don't forget, you can watch Decoding Retirement on all your favorite podcast platforms.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.